whatever I say is not what courage will look like for whoever's listening. Like, it's going to take different forms. Courage could be something as small as just getting out of bed in the morning.
Hey, real ones, and welcome to a new episode of Real with Rayo. I'm Arayo, and this is the podcast that celebrates self-development. Today's guest is the CEO and founder of Matriarch, a platform created to provide a life education outside of education. Matriarch helps people face life's toughest moments with more courage, compassion, and confidence. They offer workshops on everything from grief and mental health to DEI and self-improvement, empowering people to build stronger cultures and safer classrooms across the UK. They've led sessions for schools and organisations like Amazon, Verizon, and King's College London. But beyond the titles and impact, she is simply the friend we all wish we had growing up and the friend we're lucky to have now. She's my new friend. Ria, welcome to Real with Rayo.
Hello, thank you for having me.
How are you feeling?
I feel good. I feel excited. I'm glad you called me a friend.
Yeah, I mean, I
nice
feel like you're just
start.
my kind of girl. So
makes
like
sense.
I said to you earlier, and immediately, yes, I could just tell. Like, yeah.
Good vibes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course.
I want to get straight into it. Matriarch, that's a very bold and intentional choice to name your organisation. What inspired that name?
I get this question all the time, and I think there's a big value perception issue around it as well, because people hear Matriarch and they think anti-men or, you know, simply a feminist organisation. When I chose the name, I was 19 and I was just discovering what patriarchy was for the first time. So I think that was more where it came from. I also went to all-girls school my whole life. I've got 2 older sisters, so I've been very lucky to be surrounded by amazing women and, like, those matriarchal figures. But in the last few years, I've been learning more about actually what matriarchy is and understanding it as a concept beyond just a gendered idea. And it has these elements around wisdom and nurturing and kind of collective power rather than the kind of dominance and aggression that we're so used to within patriarchy. And so actually those values, I kind of connected the dots, are what really underpin everything we talk about Matriarch. All the workshops, every conversation that we have is very much about compassion, community, collective wisdom and power. So that has kind of fallen into my lap quite well over time. And then I really didn't think about it, but then a couple of years in, someone said, did you choose it because your name's in the middle of the word? And I was like, didn't even realise, but that's a really serendipitous coincidence. So yeah.
It just shows you it's meant to be.
Exactly.
Who was Ria as a child?
Oh, Ria was the youngest child of 3, by quite a gap as well, so by about 7 years.
Okay.
And I was the loud kid. I was just happy, energetic, especially at school. I was kind of the kid who would always shout out in class, that kind of character. But that was definitely masking a lot of low self-worth, lack of real confidence, lack of security and identity as well. So there were kind of these 2 sides, almost a Jekyll and Hyde situation. But I was always loud and I always loved leading and I always loved teaching. So I think there were real leadership traits as well when I think about myself when I was younger. But there was also a real internal sense of yearning for confidence, a stability, a security in myself that I was just really struggling to find. And it wasn't really, I would say, until uni that came about for me.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned there was a real sense of yearning to find who you were. And I think that's something so many of us can relate to. And because we evolve at different stages in our life, that yearning is never ending. Self-development and self-improvement is a journey, and we find what resonates at whatever stage in our life we're in. So how did you sort of evolve your self-identity from masking who you were as a child to the matriarch you are now?
Like you say, it's that constant cycle, really. It's always changing, it's seasonal, and I think it's that accumulative effect. That's kind of how I like to think about it, of I'm still every version of myself, but there's just little tweaks, and not just improvements, but I think just evolutions that happen, which are really beautiful to then look back on.
Yeah.
And there's different moments where those old versions, you know, pop forward and in different moments and all of that. But I think for me, the first big step really in that was starting Matriarch. I started it because I was at university, I was studying English, and there was this one module where we looked at all of the systems and structures that we live within. So everything from queer theory to feminism to anti-colonial texts. And for me, that was a huge awakening in terms of my identity and understanding who I was as a British Asian woman, a second generation immigrant, and the backdrop which I was existing. And what that allowed me to do was find that confidence to then talk about things. That's why I started the blog, because I was like, right, I've got loads of things I want to talk about and experiences here. And through that and doing it so publicly and vulnerably, it was such an empowering experience. And it was kind of like diving straight in the deep end. Like there was no, that there was negativity sometimes and there was disagreement, but it was just a case of, I'm just exploring this for myself. And then along the way, that's when people start to say, oh, I feel like I can relate to this, or I feel seen, I feel heard. And I realised, okay, this is not such a singular experience. Actually, lots of people deal with things around mental health, body image, eating disorders, cultural hybridity, whatever it is. So I think that was the real start for me.
Yeah. So many people go through things and we never really know what other people are going through unless people talk about it. And that's why I love podcasts. I've always, apart from my own podcast, I've always been a fan of just real conversations and dissecting taboo topics, because who's to say we can't speak about things, and it just takes one brave person to be able to share their experience. And you find a community which you're building with Matriarch as well, because I was doing some research and you went from writing your own blog to actually having people write for your community. And I thought that was so amazing because it must be quite cathartic for them as well. And just really, it's really beautiful because I almost can sort of see the bigger picture, how all these little things will build up into what I have a feeling Matriarch is going to grow to be. So I'm super excited.
Thank you.
And I want to speak to you more about identity, right? Like you mentioned, you're British Asian. I can relate as well. I'm Nigerian, born here, but then grew up in Nigeria and been in boarding school here since year 8. Then it's funny because I find it quite hard when people say like, oh, where are you from?
Yeah.
And then it's which part?
Yeah.
Yeah. But just in terms of identity, I think that's something a lot of us struggle that have, different backgrounds that are true to our core and our essence. But in the political and social climate we're in now, I was again on your page and it actually made me cry. There was a reel you posted when you met,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And oh my gosh. And it's so real.
Yeah.
It's so real because I think that's also something that people who don't have to experience that might not necessarily be aware of. So for context, Ria, do you want to speak about the role?
So that thank you first of all, because that's very kind. So I was doing a virtual workshop for a company around unconscious bias, and at the end, it's not part of the workshop, but I added some slides, and the slide just said, you belong and you're valued, something like that. And as I was saying it, I was just making a point around, within this current climate, there are lots of people, there are about 200 people, I think, on the Zoom call and more, who are going to be sat there feeling very unsure, uncertain, uncomfortable, put in whatever adjective you want. And it's a really scary time. It was a really frightening time. It still is, that I was on the tube today. You still have it in the back of your head of the what ifs, are people looking at me, and you overthink and you just hyper vigilant all the time. And I just put that in just to say, as a reminder, the news and everything you're seeing is telling you that you don't belong and you're not valued and all these things, but you are. Like, you absolutely are. And then afterwards, I kind of held it together during the call. And then afterwards, I just broke down because I was like, actually, I think I was telling them what I really needed to hear. And for me, it was just a case of, okay, other people need to see this too. Made a quick reel from it saying basically the same thing, because it is frightening. And to feel like, your identity is at the core of who you are, if that is in any way questioned or shaken, people do get scared, they do get defensive, and that is a very natural reaction. So I take great pride in the position I have to reassure people or make them feel safe again or make them feel comfortable. And for me, it was a case of, right, I'm sat in front of 200 people, let me take the opportunity to remind them, aside from just we're talking about anti-racism here, human to human.
Yeah,
I think that's what it was,
exactly.
just as a human being. And you know what, like, I was trying obviously not to cry because there was a professionalism element, but you know what, I think people did hear me choke up a bit, and I'm so fine with that. And I wrote a post straight after on LinkedIn about it, because as a facilitator and people who run these discussions and run these workshops, I always teach from lived experience, right? So I'm talking about the things that have happened to me that have informed my understanding of this topic, and that's what makes someone an expert in their field.
Yeah.
And that is an emotionally exhausting thing to do as well.
Yeah.
And there was a point where I was finding it really exhausting when I started doing this. So sometimes you do have to be vulnerable and you do have to be human and just let that slip a bit. And I think people connect deeper with that.
Absolutely. And it's funny because when I watched your reel, these were thoughts that I've had, and I haven't even shared that with anyone, not even my closest friends or anything. But seeing what was going on outside, I was like, oh my gosh, I am paranoid.
Yeah.
I am rethinking going on the tube because I'm in awe that someone next to me might have dangerous thoughts and might not necessarily be privy to.
Yeah.
So when you vocalized that, I was like, wow, this is why it's important for us to have these conversations, because I felt so seen, and that's why it also made me emotional, because I'm like, oh, okay, we're all feeling this together, and I'm not just paranoid and extremely sensitive.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But reinvention and, you know, evolution is a part of who we are as a identity, sort of evolves over time, and I think it can feel foreign at times, especially when you go through different life-changing experiences, right? So how do you push through those feelings of discomfort and becoming a new version of yourself?
I think there's lots of tools, in a very practical sense, first of all, there's lots of tools that I use personally. So I would describe myself as a very spiritual person. So for me, it is the journaling, it's the meditating, it's the doing the healing work and going back to those past versions of myself and sitting with them and all of those things. So in a really practical sense, that's what it looks like for me. But I think the older I get and the more experiences I have, it's just about the acceptance. It's about, okay, I'm aware, and it's happened enough times now where I can feel it building, I can feel it coming, I can feel that there's some kind of transformation or change happening, and it is uncomfortable, and sometimes it's really scary, and, you know, whatever. It's then really about how much grace can I give myself through that period, because I think when we're younger, we are naturally can be quite adverse to change, and that resistance is what makes things so much harder. It makes it such an uphill battle when you're going through any kind of change or evolution. So all I'm trying to do, and so far at 25, this is all I've learned, but it's just about how can I give myself more grace in order to experience this and really take what I can take from it. And it's really having that inner knowing and trust that I'm going to be fine, like I'm going to get to the other side, and not only am I going to be fine, like I'm going to thrive, and it's going to be great, and I'm going to discover so much and all those things. So I think it's about the grace and focusing on where is this going to lead me, and what can I collect through this experience.
What parts of your old identity did you have to let go of to make space for who you are now?
Oh my God, so many things. So many things. And a lot of things that I'm still working on. Like, they're still in process. Like, as a person, I have always naturally been quite hypercritical. That's how I describe myself, which leads me to have perfectionist tendencies, which leads me to be more judgmental probably of others and myself than I need to be. And that for me is, and that's the one that I'm really still working on, and I see it probably across my life as a constant evolution. But it's about, and through the work that Matriarch does, is really often quite self-reflective for me, because a lot of the principles we're teaching other people is, how do you deal with your bias? How do you deal with judgments that you might make that are formed by past experiences that you've had? So self-criticism is a huge one for me. I think another one for me is the comparative mindset and this insecurity that I'm not doing enough or I'm not enough. Like, it's and it ties to your self-worth ultimately. Again, I think I see that as something that's always going to be a theme through my life, and there are peaks and there's troughs. So I would say right now I'm getting to more of a peak, which is really nice.
We love that.
Love to see it. Thank God. But it's just that constant work in progress, and again, the grace through it all.
You speak about courage a lot, and I think that's something you've exemplified throughout your journey with Matriarch, from starting at 19 to being bold enough to have workshops and educate people and speak about taboo topics. So what does courage look like when you're still uncertain and maybe even battling our own like personal insecurities?
I think it takes lots of different forms, and I think the first thing is that whatever I say is not what courage will look like for whoever's listening. Like, it's going to take different forms. Courage could be something as small as just getting out of bed in the morning, and I think if you've experienced grief, like, that will really ring true to you, because it takes so much courage when you're grieving to do the smallest things. But not just when you're grieving, when you're experiencing any kind of intense negative emotion, it's always the small things. So the first thing is reframe what success, quote unquote, looks like. And I don't mean in terms of achieve the most, I mean in terms of what is going to allow you to just exist today. I think courage can also look like the bigger things. It can be the having really hard conversations. It can be calling out the people closest to you for certain things. It can be just having the balls to apply to a job or, you know, something like that. So I think it takes different forms for different people. And I think what's really important to look at is the influences we have around us when we're trying to be courageous, because they really impact us. So that's I know that for me, if I am having a day where I need to, like, you know, get it together, I need to boost myself, the people I will go to are my sisters, number one, because I've had two older sisters my whole life. I've been so blessed. That's one of my biggest blessings, because they are just my ultimate hype women. But also being the younger sibling, the privilege in that is seeing two people who have come before you do things that they didn't have someone else to do that for. So I've seen them do so many things for the first time without a guide, without an example. And to me, that's the ultimate courage. So having those conversations, learning from their experiences, that is my key influence when I need to build my sense of courage for me.
That's really beautiful and powerful, because sometimes we all have to remember that we're all just having our first go around at this. Yeah. You know, and I like that you started with little things like getting out of bed, which is not even little. And that's something that people who've not only been through grief, but like suffered with their mental health, I'm sure will be able to relate to. And it's one of those things, I think, unless you go through it, you don't realize how courageous it is. Because I always say it's like, it's actually harder to fight it. You know what I mean? It takes real strength and like mental fortitude to be able to combat those negative emotions. So thank you so much for sharing. For someone who's trying to reinvent themselves and trying to figure out what exactly the best version of themselves looks like, where do they start?
I think for me, again, I always like to start practical because I think it's useful. It can be just something as small as, let me restart that. I think if you're trying to figure out the best version of yourself or your higher self, the first thing is about dream it. Like, what do you want it to look like? And if you aren't sure on how to answer that question, what do you like in other people and their lives and what they're doing? And you can take elements. It doesn't just have to be, you know, of course you don't want one other person's exact life, but what is it? Is it their career? Is it the way that they speak? Is it what they wear? Is it their, you know, personality? What is it? And use that as your inspiration. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I feel like there's a fear there from people maybe of not wanting to be a copycat, and we hear so much about be authentic, be an individual. Like, individualism and that culture is so rife, but actually I the thing that I always say is I'm such a product of all the people who I'm surrounded by and all the experiences that I had. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a gorgeous thing. So think about that first of all. What is your higher self? And journal it, you know, on any given day, on any given week. What is your higher self doing? Who are they talking to? Who are they spending their time with? What impact are they having? What are they doing with their day to day? Like, really, because if you don't have that vision in mind, you can't get to it. So I think that's the first thing. And, you know, what does it look like, feel like, smell like? Is it luxurious? What is it? Or is it simple? Is it more basic? Like, anything's good. And then, again, in a practical sense, it's just breaking it down bit by bit. Let's say your higher self is, you know, world's best public speaker. But if you're sat there with no public speaking experience, there's a whole skill set there that you need to build. And I think when you work backwards and you break it down, one of the things my dad used to say, favourite phrase, he used to say, how do you eat an elephant? Bit by bit. And it's such a ridiculous phrase, but what he meant by that was, of course you can't eat an elephant in one go. Of course you can't. You have to do it bit by bit. And I think approaching that mindset rather than looking at the big picture and thinking, oh shit, how do I get there? It then becomes easier. And then every time you get up one of those rungs and you start climbing, the windfall comes and you feel better.
And things just fall into place naturally.
Exactly.
Yeah, I always say you don't have to have the next 10 or 20 steps figured out.
No,
just
never.
figure out the next 2.
And most people don't. That's the other thing. I think we see these people who are achieving X, Y, and the TED Talks and all that, and we really think, wow, they have got a clear plan for the next 5 years. They don't. I'm telling you right now. They really don't. These people are saying yes to projects that they don't know they can achieve. They're saying yes to talks that they haven't written yet. Like, that is really how it works. So just also remember that, because it can seem so intimidating, and it doesn't need to be.
Exactly. I want to switch gears for a little bit. We were speaking earlier on about grief, and I was saying to Ria off camera how admirable her work in this space is and how important it is, because I've shared on the podcast before, you guys know, I have lost people close to me very dearly. People close to me very dearly. For a moment, that just sounded wrong. But
no, it sounds good. Yeah.
Thank you. And this has been my first personal real experience of grief. I felt like when I was younger, I was shielded from like some of the grief that my dad probably felt when he lost his parents, and I was just a lot younger. I wasn't as present, so I didn't also really see them grieve. And it's nothing like going through it your first time round, especially as an adult, where you're just more cognizant of everything around you and your emotions. And for me, myself, and I was saying how, why don't we talk about it? Why didn't anyone tell me this was what it was like? How come people were in my life were dealing with this and I didn't really know the extent, as far as like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get out of bed today, or oh my gosh, like I'm having a panic attack in the middle of the day. I didn't know that. So I mean, first of all, what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
And I think it's so important. But I want to talk about why you think grief education is something we overlook as a society.
Oh, it's such a big question, and there's so many nuances to it. Like you mentioned earlier, in a cultural sense as well. I'm British Asian. My heritage is Indian, though both my parents are Indian. In our culture, it's like don't dwell on it too much. Like, don't focus on it, because it will bring, keep the nuzzard away and evil eye and that kind of thing. And so it's very taboo. And I think that's the same for a lot of non-Western cultures as well. So I think that's a huge element to it. I think the other element in general is just so taboo. People are so scared of it. And it makes me laugh now, because it's the one thing every human will go through at some point, in whatever way, whether you lose a friend or a pet or a father or whatever it is. And you experience grief not just from people as well. It can be jobs, it can be homes, it can be anything. And we never speak about it. If we're all going to go through it, why don't we? And it's a great leveler of humanity, because it's that one thing that you can have people from different walks of life, but they can relate over that one thing. So why don't we talk about it? And I think so much of it is just down to pure fear, because people see people who grieve as very fragile, and I don't want to make them upset and all of that kind of stuff. So there's lots of misconceptions around actually what grief is, what it feels like, what it looks like, but also we just don't have any grief literacy really within societies, workplaces, schools, anything. We just don't. And it's a real shame, because it means that those people who are grieving, who already feel scared, alone, isolated, feel even more alienated, because everyone around them is treating them sometimes like a China doll or like an outcast, because they're kind of like, well, I just don't want to be around you. That's really hard.
And I've heard situations where some people say, I just don't know what to say.
Always.
And I think that's a fair thing to say objectively. But then I also think that's because nobody lets you know what you can say. You know what I mean? So can we just speak on it? And what are some, let's just strip it back a little bit. What are some first sort of like primary grief literacy things we can address on this episode today?
Yeah, okay, so if we're thinking in a really practical sense about what good grief responses look like, one thing, and my best friend did this for me the day after my dad died, I'll never forget it. She just offered to buy us groceries. She was like, what do you need? I'll go pick it up. So she just got bread, milk, deodorant, you know, those kinds of things. And it meant so much. And immediately, if you're someone as well who struggles to have emotional or heavy or deep conversations, that's a great thing you can do because it's practical. But it means so much because what you're doing is you're taking something off the mental load for that person. The next thing you can do is be curious and read and ask questions. I think a lot of people think that they've got to talk about grief and know what to say. Ultimately, if you're on the other side of it and you're not the person who's grieving but you want to talk about it and you don't have the experience, you're on a learning curve, right? The only way through that is to learn and be curious. So let's say you're talking to someone they know died of a certain illness or something like that. Go read about it. Go understand it. Go understand the process just to get more of an insight into actually what that person's been exposed to. Because without that knowledge, of course, how will you know what to say? How will you even start to be able to sympathise with what they're going through? So be curious. And I think then the final thing in terms of actually having the conversation, ask the questions beyond just how do you feel, which I don't think actually is a bad question to ask because it does change all the time when you're grieving. But it's what do you want to do today? If it's that person's birthday, how do you want to celebrate them? What is going to make you feel lighter? What can I do to lighten your load? There's so many options, but I think going with that curiosity then takes the pressure off you of, I've got to know what to say, but also allows that person to actually
Express
speak
themselves.
and express. Exactly.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
Thank you.
And how can we make grief an empowering topic instead of a taboo one? Because we sort of like tend to tread on toes when talking about it. Even when, like at work, right? When you know something happens and then you have to say, thankfully, I'm so happy that I've been surrounded by supportive people.
Good.
But then I honestly don't know what I would do if they were not supportive. Because I felt like I was mentally like volatile, that I might have had a complete extreme reaction. But then again, like some people just don't know. Like it's a taboo topic. So how can we make it more empowering?
I think it's a case of preparation before need. Like with grief, the only time often people will come into contact with grief services or hotlines or charities is when they need it or when someone they know needs it. So I think it's about, okay, let's work back from the moment of need and actually how can we prepare. It starts with, as we learn about anything else, it's all about education, and that's why what we do at Matriarch is bringing this content through workshops to schools but also to corporate companies because adult learning never stops, and is giving people those tools, having these kinds of conversations, telling them about my experience of losing my dad and what that was like, especially because I was 19, so that's what people call quarter life grief, which means when you lose significant people before the age of about 30, because it's a much rarer thing to lose a parent, especially a parent, before the age of 30. Most people don't lose a parent until they're about 40. So sharing those taboo experiences, those very rare experiences as well, teaching from that lived experience. If you're someone who wants to learn, listening to it, listening to podcasts like these and reading about it. But then also through what we do at Matriarch and those workshops is giving people the practical tools. So, we have guides and we have workshops that actually break down, these are good things to say, these are things to avoid, this is how to help someone celebrate the person they've lost, these are the different types of grief. It's just knowledge. It's knowledge sharing and it's conversation. So that is the most vital place to start. And we want to make that as accessible for people as possible. So we're doing this workshop on grief on the 3rd of December as well online, so anyone can join. It's not just through your school or through your workplace.
Right. And I mean, thank you for sharing that your personal experience of grief has sort of shaped how you approach these conversations, because I think there's also such a big level of intention that presents itself with the way you speak about it, and even the post that you make on your personal page as well as Matriarch social page. So yeah, I just want to say thank you for sharing, because I know how brave it is to also talk about it, let alone talk about it publicly, because it can be quite triggering, and you don't know when you're going to get triggered. You can be like, oh yeah, you know, I feel fine. So are you fine talking about it now today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Thank you for asking though.
Great. So how has your personal experience of grief taught you about the importance of not only grief education, but then managing relationships while grieving?
Oh god, again, there's so many things I could speak about this for hours. I think the experience of grief and losing someone. So I lost my dad, best friend, had a great relationship with him, and again, that's not the case for everyone, so it's really important to contextualize, but it really felt like the ground fell under my feet, and I know that's how it felt for my sisters, for my mum, lots of other people as well. In terms of managing relationships, being in a family of 5, which then became 4, whilst we are all very similar, and people always say, oh god, you and your sister are so similar and all that, we are also incredibly different as people. Like the way that we process emotion, the way we interpret things, the way that we deal with our emotions, all of that is very, very different. And when my dad died, it was also in lockdown, so we were suddenly all thrust into a house together. We haven't lived together since my sisters were at school, so like 10 years before, and suddenly we were all living together again on top of each other during lockdown, couldn't leave the house, and we were grieving. And I mean, that was the ultimate trial by fire, really. And like, out of that, you can imagine there were so many difficult conversations and moments, but there were also so many beautiful learnings, and so much that I look back on now and appreciate the experience with gratitude to think, wow, the amount that I learned about how my sisters work and how and my mum and all of that. It's phenomenal, and I think the closeness that it created is like absolutely unmatched, and it's been 5 years now, and even now to this day it kind of just gets better and better and better. So I think that's that. I think when it comes, and you know, it's so complicated within a family, because also everyone's lost a different person.
Exactly.
Right? Our mum lost her partner of 40 years. That is a completely different kind of grief to what we had. And then even amongst sisters, when my dad died, I was 19, my elder sister was 26, I believe, 27, 26. That is different. She's coming out of her 20s, I'm not even in them. We lost very different versions of our dad, and the relationships we had. I had a lot of anger around that for a long time, a lot of lack of acceptance. So I think it teaches you so much about patience. It teaches you so much about the beauty of unique and nuanced relationships as well, though, because what we've all grown and found a lot of comfort in, I think, is how we did have different relationships with dad. And you know what, that isn't a bad thing, because it means that he could show different versions of himself to us, and he could be vulnerable about different things and excited about different things with each of us, and that's the beauty. We all knew, and it's same when I spoke to his old colleagues that he used to work with. It's the same thing, and I think that's a really gorgeous byproduct of grief, because when someone passes away, people start telling you these stories of that person. You get to know them again in a different way. I spoke to a parent a couple of weeks ago who's the parent of a girl that I went to school with my whole life, and we've recently reconnected. And she knew my dad all the way through school for 18 years as a fellow parent. I haven't spoken to her in 10 years maybe, and she started with saying, I'm so sorry about your dad and all of this. I burst into tears immediately, because hearing about him from her was like gold dust. It was like, oh, I'm learning more about him again, when 5 years isn't a long time, but it feels like it's been years since I've seen him. And he can sometimes feel quite distant. So back to the question around managing relationships, I think it is an absolute trial by fire in many ways, but there's so much opportunity to understand people. And what are some ways people, like close to people who may have like lost someone and are grieving, can celebrate milestone moments? Because I think that's quite a beautiful thing, and I'm actually having severe anxiety about thinking about when those milestone moments come up. Because I'm just like, oh my gosh, like it just
Yeah.
It's a lot. And
it's a lot.
The firsts are always hard, whether it's their first birthday of the person you lost or your first birthday. So my first birthday when I turned 20, we did my dad's ashes the day before. So like, you know, they are overwhelming. And still to this day, 5 years later, the birthdays don't get easier sometimes, but sometimes they do. And I think the thing to help with the fear around it is accept that they're always going to look different, and that's okay. So, you know, that first birthday for me was really hard and I was just crying all day. I was then anxious about it the following year, but actually it was a complete different experience. Had a great day, you know, had my moments of sadness, but it was more bookended rather than on the day. And that continues to happen. And I think you move with your grief, you grow with your grief in different ways. I think there's something really beautiful, again, in a practical sense, about public and private practices when it comes to grief. So, again, within my family, best point of comparison I can have is with my sisters.
Yeah.
When it comes to our dad's birthday, we all like to do it in different ways. So for me, I love to spend that morning reading, because he was an avid reader and smartest person I know, and writing a letter to him. And there's just different ways that you can celebrate it. And what we chose to, because the first birthday that we had with my dad's where he wasn't there, I was in third year of uni and it was kind of still COVID time, so I couldn't go and see my family. And so I did this thing called Pints for Nab. My dad's name was called Nab. My dad was called Nab. And basically I got everyone who knew him to down a pint for him, because he loved the pub, he loved all of that, and send a video, and I collated it all, and people got on Zoom calls together. My friends helped me host like a little birthday for him, they got a cake, like it was this whole thing. So I think if you're someone supporting, first thing is, again, curiosity, ask the questions, tune into what do you want to do, how do you want to spend this moment, what's going to feel best for you, have options. So when it comes to my dad's anniversary every year, me and my family create different options. So we say, right, we've booked a table at a restaurant if we want to go do that. If we don't want to do that, we can also stay in the house, we can go for a walk. So having options is a really good thing as well. So it takes the pressure off of like, oh, I've got to deliver or I've got to show up, because that can be very anxiety inducing as well.
100%.
And I think it's also then about remembering that person is, of course, especially if you had a good relationship with them, there's so much more than that one moment and that one day. And I think it would be such a shame to look at someone or celebrate them only through that one experience, whether it's about their death or their birth, because look at the multiplicity of their life. Like, there was so much technicolor, so much else going on, and you'll have these also more serendipitous moments to celebrate them or think about them that crop up that you couldn't have even planned. So I think show yourself the grace, plan different things, and be patient with yourself, because it's a learning curve.
Yeah, beautifully said. And what's one thing people grieving would want to hear right now, what do you think?
I think if you're having a shit day, it's the reminder that it will pass and it does get better. Like, that's the number one thing, and what I really hope I can do as much as possible for people is just provide them with a bit of hope. Because in your lowest ebb, you really can feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, and 100%. It's a really scary place to be. I think so many people, and like you said earlier, it's not just to do with grief, that experience, that could be because of mental health, it could be because of anything. So that there is hope, and everything is temporary, and it will shift and it will pass. I think if you're having a good day, is like, own it, like have the good days, because when you grieve, there's a lot of guilt around feeling good, around feeling happy, around celebrating aside from that person, you know, not about that person, and that guilt can weigh on you and it can feel so heavy. But my God, of course you deserve to be happy, of course you deserve to have joy, and not just because that's what that person would want for you. It's not about that. You should want it for yourself, and you deserve it for yourself, not just on behalf of someone else that you've lost. So I think it's about taking ownership as well of your feelings, and not just letting them happen to you, but actually appreciating the good moments that come. And again, it's a learning curve. Over time, the guilt eases. It really does ease. So, yeah, that's what I'd say.
Amazing. And when it comes to DEI and mental health workplaces, what do you wish organisations understood better?
Oh my gosh, so many things. I think, first of all, I wish they understood that everything is so nuanced. So you can't just do one training day and expect that's a plaster to a problem. That's not a solution. That's not an ongoing support. I also think it's about getting out of the solution mindset. It's like, it's not about just doing one solution or tick box things, because that's what contributes to tick box culture. It's about the consistent things and practices that you're putting in so that it's always there, because ultimately you could do a training session once a year, but if someone else joins who didn't witness that, and it's timing. So I think it's about consistency. I think it's putting money where your mouth is as well. It's really upholding those principles.
Yeah.
And I think they're really misunderstanding as well what people want, especially people from global majority backgrounds, is like, actually what I want is for you to pay for therapy for me. Like, that's maybe what people want. Or what I want is for you to put me up for a promotion before I have to ask for it. And have those advocates for me. I want you to put in a mentoring program from day dot, so grads who are coming in see their pathway and they look ahead of them and they see there is hope for me here. Because guess what? That's going to make them want to stay with you as well.
Yeah.
So I think there's and these things don't have to cost $1 million, and they don't have to be overcomplicated either.
Yeah.
Like, you could set up a mentoring system today. Like, it can happen, and it is simpler than people make you believe as well. So I think lots of things, but those are the ones that come to mind.
I love that, because it's also just about feeling seen.
Yes.
And we underestimate how much that can affect one performance, especially if you're in the workplace, but also just general well-being, even motivation to just want to even show up. But because personally, there are times when if I'm going through things or I'm not really feeling seen, I'm like, I don't even want to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Genuinely, because I just feel depleted.
Exactly.
And I think that emotion can be quite a dangerous one, because if you're not actively trying to resolve it, it just goes downhill from there.
And I think a really good example of people who do this well are teachers. So all of us will have had that one teacher at school who was just like our advocate. That one, you're probably thinking of someone, right? Everyone had, and there was a really good
Mr. Potter.
Shout out.
Shout out Mr. Potter, my English teacher.
Oh, it was my English teacher too.
Oh my gosh, no
Mr.
way.
Van and Mr. Dalton, shout out, because they just and there was a really good video that went round on Instagram recently of someone interviewing kids and asking them, do you have a favourite teacher? And all the reasoning was always because I've come in really angry before and they've known how to talk to me and not make me feel like I'm doing something wrong. And it always comes down to well-being. It always comes down to the pastoral safety. Let's apply those principles to the workplace. It's the same thing. Give something to someone that they can believe in, that they can trust, that they can put stock in, and that they really. And I think the issue is capitalist workplaces are set up competitively, and so saying that you can build trust in the workplace is kind of a really difficult statement to make, right? It's really hard, but human to human, that's the level you have to get to, not colleague to colleague. So it's about how can you create advocacy for someone else, and even if it's someone who's not 5 levels above you, even if it's someone on your team, like, there's still so much you can do there. So I think thinking back to that teacher at school and what they did to make you feel advocated for, safe, whatever it was, apply it. Like, that is the best learning possible.
That's tea. No, that's really, really good. Have you ever had to navigate subtle or unconscious bias in the workplace? And how did you stay grounded in your identity in those moments?
I left. That's a short answer of it.
You know what? Fair.
End of conversation. No. And I say that with a lot of privilege. Like, I had the opportunity to leave. I had my mum, I was living at family home, so I didn't have to pay rent. So, I really want to contextualise that, lots of privilege by being able to say that I left. There were a few difficult moments, especially at my first kind of job that I had post-masters. And I was working it part-time, I think during my masters as well. And it was just kind of those little microaggressions of, we want to use your lived experience as a woman of colour, but we kind of don't want to recognise that, and we want to kind of use it and abuse it, but not credit you for it, or not, show you that we appreciate it. And it was, you know, things around a conflict of interest and that kind of thing. Ironically, it was a DEI company, and and it wasn't and I don't believe it was doing DEI right at all. And it just didn't feel right to me. And I luckily had the opportunity for another job that came up that I moved to and I loved. And so I handed in my notice, and that was it. Because for me, it was a case of, it was a conflict of interest for me internally, because I was starting to run Matriarch workshops at this point in time. So it's kind of like, how can I be out here teaching kids about microaggressions and privilege and unconscious bias, and not then like running my life by those same principles? That is not to say that I always get it right. Like there's lots of times that I don't get it right, and that is okay, because two things can coexist. Like, you can be an advocate and be wanting to do the right thing and also still fuck up. Like, that happens. But that for me was what it was. I felt very lucky that the out lined up with when I needed to leave. I've worked with so many people doing these workshops who are experiencing this in real time and don't have that option. So what we really love to teach, one of my favourite workshops do, is protecting your mental health and self-preservation within these environments. Like, how, because sometimes it's not a case of you can, again, solve the problem because the problem's coming from someone else.
Exactly.
So sometimes it's a case of how it's self-preservation. How do you actually just look after yourself? How do you self-advocate? How do you ground yourself? Apply self-compassion? Again, all of these skills and principles, no one is teaching us. Why is no one teaching us these things? So that's one of the things that I love to teach people, and I love to run workshops when we do those topics, because the number of people I talk to who it's like, I can't solve this issue, I just need to know how to get through the moment.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, that's such a real thing, because I remember in my first job as well, I had a boss who was giving me such a hard time. And I would call my mom and I'd be like, I actually cannot do this because this is so mentally exhausting. Like, I am drained, but then at the same time, I knew I needed that experience, and I knew it was a stepping stone towards like my next role, right? So self-preservation was something that I guess in hindsight I was practicing, but I didn't really realize how important it was. And I think I was also getting that from my mom, because she was like, okay, you know what, just like hold on, like
you can
just
do it.
Exactly. But I was just like, oh my gosh, like I can't.
No, and I think, and again, it's not a skill that we're taught how to do, but even that of you going to your mum, going to someone who could be an energy giver, where your energy was being lost in so many other places, that in itself is one of the things we teach, because it's again, a lot of people don't have that emotional intelligence that they're taught of, okay, this is what you do in that moment. I also think one great thing that my therapist told me, my old therapist, loved her, Monica, a few years ago, she said to me once, the difference between pain and suffering, hurt and suffering, is that with hurt you're feeling it live, real time. Suffering is when you choose to keep yourself in that position. And I think there's a lot of people who they do have the privilege and opportunity to leave or even just look for something else, but they're not doing it, and often you're doing it probably out of fear, because you're scared of the rejection, you're scared that you won't have the security, or you're walking away from a salary, or whatever the reason is,
or just scared of a new beginning.
Absolutely. And scared of it. It takes a lot of vulnerability, it takes a lot of courage, right, to do that, and maybe you're just not there yet, so you've got to build that. Fair enough. But I also want people to reflect on, actually, am I keeping myself in this place of suffering and choosing to keep myself in this place unwantingly, unknowingly, without realising it? And actually, when you do that self-reflection, sometimes you can realise, okay, actually, there are things within my remit that I can do to better my situation. Let me apply them, because there's lots of people who don't have those tools. So let me use what I've got in my arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you stay confident in your identity when conversations about diversity can feel very tokenistic? Yeah,
it's peaks and troughs. Like, there are some moments where I just feel really much more secure. I would say this year with the social political context of the UK, definitely feeling a bit lower about that. I'm very lucky to be surrounded by some amazing, and I will specifically say white people, who are my closest friends, closest people to me, who have helped build me up by having really real conversations. Like, one of my best friends, she is this amazing white woman. The amount that she's learned since we've been friends for like 7 years, and the conversations we've had, the closeness that's created for us, and the proximity of our relationship now is amazing. There's not a day that goes by that I don't speak to her. But also the comfort then she's able to provide for me, like during August and September when those, you know, protests were happening in real life time, and me posting that video and feeling very vulnerable and feeling very scared, that is like vital. And I think ultimately anti-racism, a big principle that it talks about, is actually the people with power being able to uplift other people, utilising that the right way. That is a perfect example of how she was doing that in that moment. So that is really key, and not trying to solve it all myself, not trying to empower myself wholly all the time, because you can't. I think there's such a myth that we have around always being completely happy in yourself and being the only person who makes you happy. That's crap. Like, how can you do that? You can't sustain that. Like, it's unrealistic. You, as humans, we live in communities. We are not, it's the individualism myth again. We are meant to be surrounded by other people who do energize, empower us, uplift us, especially when we can't. So I think that's a huge element to it. For me as well, it's always going back to my culture. Like, what are the things that I love about it, especially when there's people saying that it's not valued or good or whatever. So it is watching like the films that I grew up with, is, you know, doing the prayers that I grew up with, it is hearing conversations in Punjabi. Like, it's those kinds of things that do feel very healing on a soul level, because ultimately that is the core of who you are.
I was thinking when you were speaking earlier on, that's one of the reasons why I've had an itch to like just go back to Nigeria.
I'll do it.
I am going away for Christmas. It's also to my boyfriend, but but also it's just like I just feel at home. I feel seen. I think there's a part of my inner child that's just you know, that's just like at peace. And it's like it feels safe
and comfortable,
it's synonymous with home. Exactly
it's what you know. The inner child, I think that's exactly what it is. It is that feeling of safety and joy, right? Like, I think these topics, they are so heavy. The one thing that I try and thread through everything is the joy. Like, there is so much joy to be found. There's so much joy to revisit as well. And that often, it's not the solve all, but it can really help make tough moments a lot softer to deal with. Yeah,
for sure. Ooh, asked you that. Everything you're like, tick, tick, tick. I was just fucking about it. Okay. What's one thing you would say to young people, especially, who are trying to feel a sense of belonging in spaces that can often make them feel like they don't belong?
I've had so many very beautiful conversations with young people. I think it does come down to things as simple as you are valued and you do belong, because actually there's not really anyone saying that to them as plainly as that. And like, one of the first workshops I did was with State School in Reading, and it was a group of black and brown students, and we were just from year 7 to 13, and we were just talking about their racial experiences, what makes them feel empowered, what makes them feel uncomfortable, all of these things. And one of these kids who said in the feedback, like, I've never had someone who's made me, who's just put it so plainly that who I am is valid, like just being who I am is valid, because they've always heard and been influenced and seen that some part of their identity is a problem. So I think the thing I'd say to younger people is who you are, how you exist is valid, as long as there's no harm coming to anyone else. Like, that is valid, and you are allowed to exist, and you have every right to express yourself and be who you are, and enjoy it. Like, enjoy that, because there's so much, that's what makes you. And I know that sounds so cliche, but it is true.
No, it's true.
And I think it's cliche when you're younger, and then the older you get, the more people that you see who have really found like true comfort in who they are. Those are like the people everyone's drawn to, right? They're the people that you think of as I'm saying this right now, because you're like, oh yeah, you are that. And it's inspiring, and it's comforting in a world where like identity politics is so rife and people are like, you can't be this and you can't be that. Who cares? If it's not harming you or anyone else, honestly, who cares? Like, let people just do what they need to do.
Exactly.
Because the irony is, as long as you're comfortable in who you are, it actually doesn't bother you. When you're truly comfortable in who you are, and if you're a woman, if you're a man, if you're anything else, if you're truly comfortable in that and that form of identity, someone else being something different doesn't bother you. And if it does bother you, time for some self-reflection as to why and where those insecurities are. So to young people, be who you want to be, enjoy it, and enjoy it.
Yeah, it made me think about Tiwa, who's been a guest on this podcast. We actually recorded in this studio as well. There's something she always says I think is so beautiful, which is, you matter simply because you exist.
Yeah.
And that just echoes everything you've said beautifully, and it's such a simple but profound thing to remember. Okay. Matriarch has grown steadily but intentionally. What have some of the slower seasons taught you?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at our Instagram following, for example, that number has been stagnant for 5 years. Like, it has it because we got this huge surge during 2020 and BLM, because we were explicitly teaching people about that.
Yeah.
And the silence has come. So there's been lots of slower seasons, and like when I was doing my degrees and my jobs, like I haven't been able to give it as much. Lots of slower seasons. I think slower seasons always give time for self-reflection, so it always allows me to reflect on what am I really enjoying, what am I missing. And there was season when we started doing these workshops, we were only doing race-related DEI workshops. Still do them to this day, core part of what we do, but I was just getting emotionally drained, so things slowed down a bit because I just couldn't keep up, like doing, sharing your emotional experiences.
About you.
Oh my god, it is exhausting to do. It's exhausting even when you have one conversation, let alone you're doing it, and then you've got to facilitate a room full of kids who probably don't want to be there, and it's like a lot going on. So I think that's a huge part of it, and just recognizing, okay, what am I missing and what do I need? And you can't really listen to the answers to those questions if you don't provide the silence to hear it. So I think that was a huge part for me. And I think also it's always come down to the trust. It's like, what do I truly believe here? And for me, it's been an unwavering belief in Matriarch and like what we're going to achieve and what's happening, and disrupting the education industry in the UK, reforming what we see as important skills to teach to people, and actually teaching them to people, and working with the world's biggest brands and working with the most underfunded schools in order to make that happen, to create that shift in society, to create that shift where right now it's scary and it's dominance and it's hate and it's anger, and being part of the thing that shifts our society and our world to actually be kind and calm and collective.
Wow. No, I'm just taking everything in. It's so true, and it really is a shift, and it starts with organizations like you and like your unwavering self-belief, because you've also recently announced you're doing this full-time. So what made you take that plunge? Because that is just an evidence of how much you're willing to bet on it.
And that's exactly it. It proves that kind of core stability almost that I've always had. Like when I see the word, when I hear other people talk about it, I'm just like, I know that is what I'm meant to be doing. And I took that jump from my old job that I loved, that that job was amazing. It allowed me to move to London, it taught me so much, like I used those skills every single day, but it just got to a point where I was upset every day because what I was doing was not aligned with my sole purpose. And and I've been very lucky from a young age to know what my purpose is, really, since my dad died. To be doing something every day or most days that you feel so unaligned with, it just creates this pull within your soul. And I think that's what I was experiencing, of like, why am I not doing it? And it was the reason I wasn't doing it was the human level. It was the practicality, the stability, the income, of course, right? And I'm still not there. Like, it's scary and it's uncertain. It's never going to be perfect, but it's worth it. Like, I think when you have that absolute unwavering belief and you are just fucking relentless about it, because your gut is screaming and it's what you're pointed, and when you wake up every single day it's the thing that your brain is on. How can you ignore that? I think that's what I was feeling in my soul. It was this heaviness of I'm not okay because I'm not doing what I'm meant to be doing. And then it was friends and family pointing out and being like, you know what you want to do, go do it. Like, go and do it. And actually, when I told my mum I was going to leave my job, she cried with me because she knew how much it meant for me to get to this moment. And as a mum, what I'm so grateful for is that she didn't tell me to do it. She did a really good thing there. She didn't say, Ria, you need to go do this. She watched and observed me get to that point. She encouraged me, she gave me guidance, she gave me advice. So when I got there, for her, it was the relief of finally all the sacrifices we have made, both her and my dad, they didn't do all of that as immigrants so that we would be in jobs that we hated and be unhappy. They want us to be doing and work so hard so that we could do the things that we love to do. And we got to that point. So that's what we're doing. And now it's just being relentless and making it work and, you know, talking to the right people. But yeah, it is amazing, and I feel so lucky that I get to do this every day.
I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
I am so proud of you because
you.
It takes so much courage, honestly. Okay, we'll move into the final section now. So what would you say is your 3-step playbook on reckoning identity, especially when people have been through, you know, life-changing experiences like grief or battling self-identity in a society that undervalues them?
I think the first thing is the acknowledgement. It's not even acceptance. I think it's acknowledging what's happening or has happened, because a lot of the time we're rushing so fast to get to the other side and we don't even realise what we're trying to get to the other side of. So I think the first thing is just acknowledge, like, really take that time to allow the information to settle, whether it's because you've lost someone or you've been made redundant or whatever the thing is. So acknowledge would be first of the 3. Second of the 3 would be allow other people to help you, allow other people to support you. I have this thing that I talk about all the time, especially around grief, but like as a general principle, that we're all torch bearers. We all have a torch that we're trying to keep alight all the time. And it's our responsibility, mainly, day to day, to do that. But there are some moments that happen in life where it's too hard. It's too difficult. And again, it comes back to humanity and community. We're not meant to hold it constantly. Sometimes you have to accept and give that torch to someone else, whether it's a friend, family, whatever, and just say, listen, I need you to help me with this, and the right people will do it. So I think that's the second thing. Who are your torch bearers? Who can support you through that moment whilst you find stability for yourself and really reckon with what's going on? So acknowledgement, stability, and then the final part I would say is doing the work. Like, I know that's very broad, but doing the work could look different for different people, right? So doing the work could be going to therapy. It could be really working on the acceptance of what's happening to you. It could be rebuilding. Like, you could be having to build brand new foundations and really figure that out. It could be learning. Like, it's whatever work you need to do. And again, break it down. You just need to get to the next step. You don't need to get to the top of the ladder. You just need to get to that next step so that you can get through the day. And that might look like starting therapy for the first time. It might look like, let me just read about this health condition that I've just been diagnosed with. Could be anything. So acknowledge, torch bearers, and the work, to put it shortly.
And the final question at the end of each episode, I always ask my guest what's their ikigai is. Ikigai translates to your reason for purpose. It's a Japanese concept, and I'll just ask you the 4 questions. We'll make it rapid fire, super quick. So, what do you love?
My family.
What are you good at?
Teaching people.
What can you be paid for other than what you're already doing?
Public speaking. So not workshops, but public speaking.
Nice, I agree. And what do you think the world needs?
More kindness. More kindness. People are too mean. People have too much hate in their heart. We need to be kinder to each other.
Lighten up the load.
Yeah. Ease up. We're all going through it.
Honestly. Thank you, Ria. This was an amazing conversation. I'm so proud of you and excited to see what you build with Matriarch.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been fabulous.
Amazing. Well, if you enjoy this episode, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. I will leave Ria's details as well as all of Matriarch's details in the description box. I love you, and I'll see you in the next one.